And then in LA, we had a very diffuse district focus. And what we tried to say is that A through G could be the effort that would bring all these different efforts together, especially when you talk about SLCs that you mentioned, when you talk about career tech education, ELL, the Williams case, special ed, the achievement gap. We had a payroll crisis in LA you guys probably read about where people were being overpaid. But the payroll crisis really took away the attention of the superintendent and most of his staff for the last year, and as a result, A through G hasn't happened. But we were trying to say, use these to put, dropouts the same issue, right? SLCs, same issue. ELL, same issue. They all have their distinct nuances, but if you come up with a vision that addresses all of these, you're not as diffuse in your efforts. Instead, they had a different committee on each of these, different staff members assigned to them, and there was no synergy among them all. Accountability to ensure progress is key. We've been pushing to get benchmarks across the way. I think it's also really important to get the roles and responsibilities, the different efforts defined. So if you're a community member, what's your role? If you're the teachers, what's your role? If you're the superintendent, what's your role? It's similar to what you described about here, having the formal process and defining benchmarks. We have those, but no one pays attention to them except for us. Pre-K through 14 to 16 efforts are key, as I mentioned before. It's not just about high schools as much as we think that we can just solve it, but you can't, a summer bridge program. I agree, Linda, you have to just draw the line and you have to jump and you have to do it, but you got to get those middle schools, you have to drive down those expectations. You can't have just high expectations in high school. You have to make certain the whole system does. We know that preschool makes a big difference in terms of graduation rates and long-term learning and going on to college. And then colleges and universities are key to making certain that you fill those gaps. The early colleges, getting some of those summer school courses. In LA, science and language are the big shortcomings. So how can the universities play a role? And then the other part is articulation programs. So that high school to college isn't another gap, but they're seamless. So how do you make certain that the universities are connected to your efforts? Santa Ana Unified does a good job of this, especially with their community colleges, and as a result, they send most of their kids to community colleges, which is huge. And in addition, now we have to build that gap between community college and the four-year university, especially since that's where most of our Latino and Black students go. In LA, another negotiation was the opt-out. We didn't want it, but the one school board member said she wouldn't vote for it unless we put in an opt-out, which said that if a student in the 10th grade and their parents don't want A through G, they should opt out if they have something else in mind to find specifically a career tech path. The other day I had a principal ask me if we can opt out an entire school. So if you have the opt-out, and unfortunately it becomes the focus, so as you talked about, Linda, it's better just not to have it. Community partners keep agenda through staff and leadership changes. It's been key. The only reason why this is really still alive is because we have this community effort that keeps on pushing despite the turmoil that happens in the district. Because like I said, if a payroll crisis happens, then the district loses its focus. We keep that pressure on. So that's been critical over the last 3 years, and we continue to move forward on this one.